A lot of my 20s was just full of regret, but I quickly learned that I didn't really have what it takes. I was experiencing a lot of brain fog, a lot of depression, and this is where perfectionism started to just ruin my life. I'm currently in Central Park, and because there's no one around, I might be able to take my mask off. Since this is a story time, I'll get into my own experience. In my 20s, I came fresh out of high school, and I talked a little bit about this in some other videos I've made, but I'll just kind of gloss over it. In high school, I was a thespian, so I was really into theater, and that just became like the only option for a career for me. It's the only thing that I love to do, and so that's just what I narrowed in on. I chose that life path, and I went with that life path, being lucky with the resources that I was given to be able to go to a private art school for 4 years, and I did go all 4 years, and I did graduate. But right after that, it was like I just assumed that I would make it. I assumed that I had the drive to make it as a full-time actor. But halfway through art school, I realized that it really wasn't what I loved. But what I loved was the people that I went to school with, so I didn't want to leave. School was fulfilling. I don't really think I would have stayed all 4 years if I didn't feel a level of fulfillment with it. It just barely grazed the surface on what my actual skill set was. And so a lot of my 20s was just full of regret in general for going to school, and feeling a lot of guilt for not actually pursuing theater like I had told myself I loved. But I realized that just because you have a degree in something does not mean that you have to do it. And I mean, that's a pretty privileged thing to say, but if I could go back now, I certainly would consider other options, despite people in art school telling you, like, from the very first day, if you can see yourself doing anything else, do it, you know? And maybe anyone else who's not in the arts community can relate as well. Just feeling like you have to go into a degree just because of parent expectations, family expectations, or you feel like you have to work a 9 to 5 because that's what's expected. A lot of millennials, a lot of Gen Z just are feeling that pressure to fit into this like box of a society, and those expectations that come with it. And I was just never one to fit into that. I chose a different route, but in a route that I thought I would be able to support myself. But I quickly learned that I didn't really have what it takes. It's funny because I gave myself such a hard time for not pursuing the degree that I got in college. I gave myself such a hard time for not auditioning, for not wanting to network, and also I had no intentions of actually staying in Seattle, which is where I went to school, where I built all my connections. I had no intention of staying there. I had always wanted to move to New York, and I had always wanted to travel, which I ended up doing both of those, but acting just kind of took the back burner. And in any career, it can't really take the back burner. There was no like going half into it for me. Like, it was, you choose one thing and you have to stick with it. But I didn't want to spend my 20s doing something that I felt like I needed to do just because I had invested time. Man, that is a rule that just applies to everything. Like, just because you put a lot of time and effort into something doesn't mean it's right for you. I don't know, it takes some sort of a wake-up call to be able to recognize that for yourself, to be able to realize when you are growing and then some things that you thought you'd grow with, you're not, and to be able to walk away from that. That's a whole different story for a different video, but it takes a lot of guts. I felt that because I didn't have the drive to become an actor, that I didn't have the drive to do anything else important in my life. And I am smart, just not in the 9 to 5 way. I honestly would say that if you found out what you're passionate about and you're doing it by like the age of 22, that's amazing. Honestly, you're gonna have like a very long career, and that's gonna be amazing. But I would say that you are in the minority of that situation, because a lot of people are struggling with that. But as you know, I grew as a person through my 20s, my interests started to change, and how I asserted myself in the world started to change, and that was all from putting myself in some really uncomfortable situations. Oh gosh, wind. The only way I was actually able to support myself after college was hospitality. It was serving. I mean, I became an ice cream scooper at Pike Place Market for a couple years, which actually was one of my favorite jobs. That was actually really amazing. And then that was just the ripple effect. Like, hospitality and serving just became the way I was able to pay rent, and then it ended up like just consuming my life, and it just became the easy option. But it ended up taking over more of my life than I wanted it to, because I didn't have the time or the energy to do both, to do acting and like learn a menu and learn how to do both jobs perfectly. Even though restaurants was just something I was doing to make ends meet, I wanted to do it perfectly. And this is where perfectionism started to just ruin my life, because I couldn't put my focus on more than one thing and do both to the level that I wanted to do it. So I decided for myself that I couldn't do it at all if I couldn't do it perfectly. It's taken a lot to start to let go of that mindset, but it's all specific to like how I work in general, how my brain works the best, and it is when I can only focus on one thing. It had to do with me. I had like this thyroid diagnosis in my early 20s as well. I was experiencing a lot of brain fog, a lot of depression. I thought I was anemic, so I went to the doctor, and then I got a blood test and I ended up having hypothyroidism, which affected just my energy levels in general. And energy is something I've really struggled with, and it just made me not be able to think clearly. And how frustrating is that when you're trying to build a career but you cannot think clearly? I mean, there are some days I remember before my diagnosis where I could not get out of bed. So it's just something I've had to work with, and that's been my own thing, but I've had to figure that out for myself. For me, quarantine was, and COVID and, you know, 2020 in general was just the time that I needed to literally be forced out of my old lifestyle and my old bad habits, and it gave me the time that I needed to reassess what I wanted and how I wanted to do it, and what I was actually good at, and what I actually like felt fulfilled by and wanted to spend my time working on. And it's funny that that ended up being a YouTube channel, which is very much artistic. And I'm sitting here at 29 still kind of figuring this out, but it's like one curveball just keeps piling into another. You know, you get one thing down and then a curveball gets thrown in the way. But honestly, that is life, and that is something it's been really hard for me to not feel down about it, because every time you feel like you're up, something just knocks you down. If you have tools and tactics to like bring you out of situations faster, like even in acting school we called it an exit strategy. An exit strategy in real life is just absolutely necessary. And even, I mean, I opened up a couple weeks ago in a video of mine that I have been going to therapy, and that is true, but I had been talking to my therapist about like ways that I cannot feel like shit after I get off the Zoom call, the therapy Zoom call. And you know, what are things that make me happy? What are songs I can listen to that can make me happy, or like calm me down or bring me back to myself and get out of my head, get out of those feelings and bring me back to myself? And for me, it's dancing around to my favorite music, or it's going for a run, or cleaning my space. It's actually just like getting out of my body, or getting into my body, out of my head and into my body, that brings me back to myself, so that I don't sit and wallow in things that I cannot control. So that is huge when adjusting to curveballs in life, and especially in just these times where everything is just kind of up in the air with COVID. And I'm learning that even now, the amount of ups and downs I've gone through, feeling that pressure and after graduating and just creating my own path, that is not going to end now just because I'm making this video and sharing it with you. I'm having my own journey with it all, and it's not been easy really, but it's definitely worth it to be able to like recognize where the progress has happened. And I suggest if you ever feel stagnant in life, if you feel like you're just treading water and not moving anywhere, make a list of 10 things in your life that have made progress based on what your own goals are and what you want for yourself. And you see that even just the littlest things count as progress, and you don't have to share the list with anybody. It's just you acknowledging the fact that you are growing, whether it's at the speed you want or not, but change is happening just simply by it being another day. If you feel like you're being called to do something other than what you're currently doing in life, that's okay, because it may have served you at a certain point, and you did the right thing by following that gut feeling of following a certain career because you enjoyed it. But as you change, so do your interests, so do your passions, because you're picking up and learning new things every single day, and that can change where your life direction is supposed to go. I don't know where the fuck I am. So I ended up on the complete opposite side of the park that I wanted to, because I got lost in conversation. What are some things you can do? And the answer is just to start very small. Start to incorporate this new way of life in very small ways, even if it's like reading a chapter out of a book of something you want to learn, that you want to change your career path. Like a chapter a day is very doable. Start very small and then build up from there. so that way just making this change in general can seem more attainable, and you're still learning things every day, and you're still putting food on your table. And I guess just the only next thing you can do is just continue to be flexible, but you'll have to learn how to juggle a little bit to add more things into your life, add new activities and new practices, and spending time that you maybe would spend TV, like studying something new. Keep in mind that just because it's accepted by society does not mean that that is the only way. Okay, my camera's gonna die. Thank you for joining me if you're new to this channel, and thanks for watching. Leave me a comment, like this video if you got something out of it, and make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Ring that little notification bell, and I will see you in my next video.